And so here I'm going to just talk about when I talk to pastors. This is a process that I use with pastors. And so I'm pulling back the curtain. I'm telling the rest of you how I help pastors to think through and be a better leader. And I needed some way to grow for myself to be a better leader of the church. I was strong in some areas, Bible teaching, general awesomeness, humility. Thank you for recognizing that. You know, I could see the Lord work in areas that I was gifted in. But then there were these blaring areas that I was weak in. And no matter how much I would ask for help or just read a book, I just was not good in these things. I needed practical ways to grow. So I'm strong on the creative side, not strong on the organizational side. And whenever I would have a church issue I needed to fix or I needed help with, I would go to an older pastor and say, here's what I'm dealing with. And I would almost always get the same answer. And it was something like, hey, just trust the Lord, it's going to be okay. Now, do you believe that? That's not a trick question. Yes, I trust the Lord, and I trust the Lord is going to help me through this. But that doesn't mean there's something I shouldn't be doing differently in the operations of the church to avoid these problems or to help train workers or something. So I just became a little bit irritated with that, let's just trust the Lord and you're going to be okay, brother. I do trust the Lord. And it was almost an implication, subtly, not outrightly, that if you were trusting the Lord, you wouldn't have these problems. Now, what is that we call that in church? That's legalism. That's a subtle form of condemnation. So many years in the ministry, I felt condemned. Because if I really was trusting the Lord, we wouldn't be having these little challenges. And do you know many pastors operate under this cloud of condemnation? I'm telling you how the mind of a pastor works. While in front of you, they are trying to inspire you to trust the Lord. But on Monday morning, they feel condemned about something and often want to quit the ministry. Someone asked Alistair Begg, you know that name, if he ever felt like quitting the ministry. His answer was yes, every Monday. Now, it is purely my trust in the Lord that would get me through. Lord, I know that you are able to deal with this. That still didn't address the fact that I needed to grow in other areas of my leadership. And so I wanted my ministry to be centered on the Lord. I didn't want to just adopt, organizational principles straight out of the world or those kinds of things. And in Calvary, that's anathema to go read a secular book for leadership principles. And, there are no shortage of leadership books. I in Amazon once, did a search, leadership books. I came up with something like 60,000 or something. I was like, okay, great, pick one of those. And so the question is, why are there so many leadership books? Because none of them has figured it out. They've all got some little take. Now, there are truths that you can learn in many of these books. And often they're just principles that don't translate to practical. I understood the principles. I didn't know how to put it into practice. And so This is something that I wrote out of my years of experience and out of a coaching program I went through. But it's not rocket science. It's basically what I said. Inspiration needs to translate to organization. It is that simple. And often it doesn't translate. The bridge is broken down. So when I talk to a senior pastor who is often faced with some discouraging problem, I will not give him let's just trust the Lord, you're going to be okay. And neither do I want to give him some formula for running the church, because ministry is not a formula. And I don't have some ministry program to put over a church and say, this is how it works. And God forbid, we're not so, simplistic as to think I have some program. It's really more of a process that you can take. If you're a leader, you can use this, and you have to take it and use it in your ministry. And it's essentially 5 areas of ministry. So it's commission, vision, mission, organization, and communication. Now, I need it to be that simple because I just need a simple way to think this, a way to think. And it is that simple because the way I was thinking, I would always run into the same roadblocks. And because of my ministry training and culture, every organization has a culture. We use that word, culture. And culture would be just our common way of thinking and acting. It's unspoken. Every family, every business, every church has a culture. Calvary Chapel has a culture. It is a culture that was birthed in the revival, that was this exciting, explosive work that God did in saving young people by the thousands and thousands. And as much as that was a genuine work of God, it created a philosophy of ministry was, we just need to wait on the Lord and something explosive will happen. It's, we're going to preach it and they will come. Have you heard that? They're not just guaranteed to come just because you preach it. And because it has worked that way in some places, it becomes the common culture of Calvary. So I realize I'm going against the flow a bit, but we are now 50 years old as a movement. And we want the same work of God. We don't want to manufacture a fake work of God, but it looks different now than tens of thousands of young people showing up and getting saved. We're still saying, number one, God has a work to do. And the Jesus movement was totally a work of God. And here's a news bulletin. Nobody planned for that to happen. Right? There was no committee that organized a revival. You cannot organize the work of God. But you certainly can, by disorganization, get in the way of a work of God. So organization in itself is not carnal. It's just some measure of it is necessary to help move this along. So commission, what is commission? Commission is calling. Every one of you, God would commission you to do something. I was commissioned to be a senior pastor. Pastor Greg, my wife was commissioned to put up with me. Whether it's we know the big titles, pastor, teacher, missionary, apostle, but it could be youth pastor, it could be And there are many places in the body of Christ. So that's between you and the Lord. And out of commission comes vision. Because I will say to a pastor, are you sure you're called to the ministry? Yes, I'm sure. I'll say, tell me the story. How do you know? How did you confirm that? They'll tell me the story. They are sure. Yes, I'll say, okay, now, why did God call you to the ministry? What did God put you in your city to do? And the answer is what I've shared. Well, I want to teach the Bible. Now, that is our culture. That's because that's what Pastor Chuck gave to us. And that's a right model to follow. But again, that's not a vision. That's a means to a vision. If you preach the word as God would have you to do, what effect is that going to have? What people are you reaching? Pastor Chuck's could see the Lord had raised him up to reach the generation of the hippies. That was his task. And his means to do that was preaching the word, teaching the Bible verse by verse. So the Great Commission, we're all a part of that, under vision. And a pastor will say to me, well, the Great Commission, that's our vision, isn't it? Go into all the world, preach the gospel, make disciples of all nations. Yes. What's your part in it? Now, again, you look at, say, Peter and Paul. Both called to be apostles, both commissioned as apostles, right? Did they then both have the same vision or the same task to go do? They didn't. They both went out and fulfilled the Great Commission. Now, Paul wanted to take the gospel to who? No, who did he want to take the gospel to? To the Jews. But who did the Lord send him to? The Gentiles. And in fact, what happened when Paul would try and stand up in front of the Jews and share the gospel? He made them mad. He just caused riots. He didn't get the fruit, the results he was looking for. Not that every time he did that, he shouldn't have ever done it. But generally, the Lord said, no, I'm not sending you to the house of Israel. I'm sending you to the Gentiles. Now, who got sent to take the gospel to the Jews? Peter. Now, wouldn't you have chosen Paul, the one who really knew the scriptures? And yet, it was the Lord who assigned the task or the vision. So we're all part of the general Great Commission, but the Lord gives you a unique place within it. I was in Portland. I arrived at Portland when I was 35 years old. I wanted to teach the Bible. I knew I had a hurting church. Was really about this many people when I came by the time the previous pastor drove everybody away. So my first task was to heal those people, not to reach the city. I had a very unique task given to me, or the vision. And then as I saw through the years why the Lord brought me to Portland, it wasn't general evangelism. It was restoring Christians who used to go to church. I would have weekly people show up and say, well, we used to go to church years ago. We used to go to church, and I haven't been to church in years, and I really feel the Lord is calling us back, and somebody told us about your church, and I really like this. And that was my manner, my personality, my gifting to be able to restore Christians back to the Lord. That's a pretty unique place in the Great Commission in the body of Christ. And I could start to see I was called, I had a unique task to do, begets vision. But then vision, once you begin to see what that goal is or that God-given purpose is, then begets mission. Now, we often confuse vision and mission. Vision is the goal. Mission is the actions required to reach the goal. So you have a clear stated vision here in the church. You're seeing it accomplished. But then what does that look like in each department of the church? Say in the youth group, or the worship team, the women's ministry. You don't all get to have your own vision detached from the overall church vision. Do you know that? You're not special. Now, it might be unique in its accomplishing and fulfilling. And the activities then in your ministry might be a little different than in another ministry, another department of the church, but it's the same specific vision of the church. And this is where it's difficult, because we have a common vision which dictates the mission or the activities within children's ministry, women's ministry. So the activities might be a little different, but if you're not talking to each other and coordinating, then you may not be reaching the same vision, or in a way that is the most productive it can be. Because maybe you're overtaxing volunteers, or overtaxing other, maybe financial resources, or you double book the calendar. There's all kinds of things that have become a conflict within the church that you're wearing people out, because we need volunteers for this, then we need you to run over here and do this. So that's why communication, if commission begets vision, vision begets mission or activities, then mission dictates organization. This is where organization comes in. The organization is needed to put everything in its place so that it functions in a way that's productive and not in conflict with other things going on in the church. Does that make sense? It's kind of very basic. Of course, we need to not do anything that disrupts another ministry in the church. And then if there is organization, there has to be communication. Now, where's the breakdown? Does everybody follow me? It's not too brilliant, that it's not so profound, it's kind of basic. But what I want to say is that it works. It's not in stating this that's so profound. The difficulty is in doing it. Commission begets vision, which begets mission, which begets organization, which begets communication. It's hard to do. Not because it's hard to do, but because we don't want to do it. Now, you don't have to say it out loud, but you know in your own heart what part of this would be hard for you. And it is difficult for one department of the church, say the women's ministry, to see how their activities would upset another part of the church. We're organizing our own ministries. Why are you bugging us? Well, guess what? Every part is connected. We're all in the same body. And even if you can't see how it's affecting the rest of the church, it is. And because we love the idea of being a part of the church, we want to be left alone. Amen? You're not making eye contact with me right now. Isn't it easier just to be left alone or to work in your little group? Now, tell the truth. Amen? Okay, guess what? We're all like that. I am like that. I would rather just be left alone and for everybody to cooperate. But we are designed in such a way that that's not how it works. We're connected, and because of that, we have to communicate. Or it's just not going to work. So, there's often a breakdown in one of these or more of these 5 steps. Almost always. Commission. That would be where people are serving in ministries God didn't call them. But they did it just because we needed volunteers. Now that's fine for a time, but when it moves up into more responsibility and leadership, we don't want leaders in a place where God never called them to be. And if they get frustrated, say, great, that's fine. Let's find out where the Lord did call you to be, and let's move you there. There is no failure in making a change. Vision. There's often a lack of vision, an unclear vision. We are more excited about the activities than the results. Mission. Activities are often outdated or just plain unfruitful. Organization. Planning feels too restrictive for us creative types. We want to just go with the flow because the Lord's going to work. And to say the obvious, God is organized. Isn't God? God is a God of order. So the fact that he's given us the capacity to be organized is kind of obvious. Disorganization is the second law of thermodynamics. It's disorder. Communication. People aren't able, if there is a lack of communication, then what happens is that people in the church aren't able to share in the work or the rewards of the work. We pastors are really good at planning things, announcing them, and no one in the congregation knows what the heck you're talking about. Well, we've planned this great thing. Aren't you excited about it? Well, I've never heard of it before. Well, we need you to volunteer. Why? Why should I be excited about this thing? Oh, I heard some rumor about it. And there is a reason pastors don't communicate with the church. Everything. First of all, they think that everyone knows what's going on in their head. But secondly, they're afraid if they share too much, they'll get pushback and complaints. We don't like that. Why are you doing it that way? And so they don't share very much. And because we are not a congregational type of church government where we vote on things, we go way the other side and don't share anything. Until 2 weeks before an event, we need volunteers to sign up. And then pastors say to me, why don't I have any volunteers? I says, because you're a one-man show and you haven't communicated anything to the church about how the Lord is working in your heart, how you arrived at this, what is the vision, so the people have been left out. They don't feel included in this thing that God is doing. Maybe it's a genuine thing, work that God wants to do, and yet no one knows about it. So if there's a breakdown, it could be that God is called, God's given a vision. All the activities are planned and well organized, and yet there is no communication, so not very much can happen. And let me say, communication is two-way. It's from leadership to the church, but it's also from the church to leadership. Because they need to know, the The leaders, the pastor and other area leaders need to know how the Lord is working in your ministry or in your life, because he's just trying to be in touch with what the Lord is doing. Commission, vision, mission, organization, and communication. So the result is pastors are often stressed by a lack of clarity and even fruit in their ministry. It's just unclear. Where are we going? What's happening? Staff and volunteers often feel aimless and unproductive. And then the congregation doesn't know where the church is going or how they can participate in the function, in the ministries of the church. And we want people to just show up out of the goodness of their heart, be here because they love the Lord. And if you're not here to volunteer because you love the Lord, then you're not a real servant. Have you ever heard that? I've probably said that. Let's be honest. Because that is our culture in Calvary. If you don't follow through, you're not a servant. Maybe, but maybe I'm not following through because you haven't told me anything about why we're doing this. You're not including me. And so what happens is leadership starts to treat volunteers and workers as employees rather than partners. That is a real breakdown in larger churches. And people don't feel appreciated. So is it okay that I'm sharing the hard truth about ministry with you? Okay, this is really the challenges of ministry. And I've made all these mistakes. Well, we're not voting. Why do I have to tell people? Well, because it's their church. And if the Lord's preparing for a new work, they want to hear about it. They want to be excited about it too, just like you are, our pastor. Well, I didn't think of that. Well, they should be excited just because we announced it. It's just overly simplistic. We're together. We're doing this together. This is the part about being connected and communicating. We're not asking the people for a vision for the church. We're not asking them to decide all of the activities. We're not asking them to make the calendar or make the budgets and all of those things, but we are sharing those things with them. And they might even have input that would affect leadership decision-making in those things. What do you guys think of what I've shared so far of those things? Comments, questions? It makes sense. It's kind of practical. It's easy for me to say.
People not only need to hear the vision, but they need to feel the vision.
Yes.
Because as they feel the vision, then they start praying, they start giving their time,
Yes.
get it becoming a part of it.
Yes, exactly. And think of a new family showing up at church. They're not going to sit here for 2 months to figure you out. They're going to come one time and they want to know, what is this church about? So every Sunday you need to be telling them what you're about. And it can feel tedious in leadership or the pastor to say these things. Here's our vision. It should be wherever. Graphics stated. Somehow it is said, or it's coming out from you in your areas of ministry. But people, visitors, need to catch on quickly what the Lord is doing here and what you're about. Because what are they saying? They're saying, do I belong here? Do I want to share in the work? So communication is so basic. Well, we've been to that church 4 times and I'm still not sure what they're about. Other than they never have enough workers for the things they're doing. So you keeping the main thing up there. What is our goal? What's our vision? Who are we? The rest of this stuff is serving those things. Now, I've given you more than enough notes than I have time to go over. But the rest of the notes are questions that work out the things that this template, this process I've given you. Commission. Now, if I were to sit with you, and maybe you as staff pastors or department leaders, you could even ask these questions to those who are serving with you. Commission. I'm on page 3 of my notes. You could ask them, and this is how coaching works. Coaching is not instruction. I'm not training you to do the ministry. You already know. But it would be like if I were a basketball coach and I got 5 new kids to play basketball, and one kid says, "Man, coach, I'm a center. I love to play center position." And that means he's going to be under the basket, blocking shots, getting rebounds. And so I go, "Great, Johnny, try that out." But he never gets any rebounds. I'm just sitting there watching him on the court. He's not getting rebounds. He's not blocking shots. Everybody else dominates him. What I'm going to look for is what he is gifted to do on the basketball court. He's an amazing ball handler. He's an amazing shooter, passer. I'm going to move him to another position and go, Johnny, you're not center. You're too short, for one thing. You are really gifted. I want you to play over here in point guard. You can see the court. You're passing. You're shooting. And as a leader for others in ministry, you're watching people, seeing what their gifting is, where they're frustrated, and go, maybe this is not your place on the court. When and how did God call you into ministry? They know something about their earlier years in serving the Lord. There's some of their testimony. How did you test your calling to ministry? Tell me what ministry you've been involved with before. Well, I tried this, and I did this, and I did this. Number 3, what fruit did you see when you tried out those areas of ministry? Well, I tried this, and it didn't do anything. I was just frustrated. I tried this, and I saw this happened. Went on this missions trip, and I saw people get saved. So you're looking for them to tell you what they already know, but frankly, they've often forgotten about. People are often volunteering for positions in ministry that they're not gifted to do. But with a few questions, you can help them sort it out. Now, number 4 is what I would ask somebody who is discouraged in ministry or a pastor. Are you questioning your calling to ministry because of personal or ministry problems? And sometimes they are. So the question is not whether God wants to use you, it's how does God want to use you? You're allowed to make a change. And in the area of communication we'll get to here, people don't want to tell the pastor, I am horrible at this, or I'm struggling. They will just endure in their struggling ministry for months, and suddenly they will quit. Rather than feeling permission to say, I'm no good at this, or I need help with this. Under vision. So if God called you into ministry, what task did God call you to accomplish? Vision is the goal, not the activities. So I've already covered a lot of these things. But again, if you think of any major Bible hero, you automatically associate a task God gave them to do. Abraham, Moses, Nehemiah. Are you with me? Okay. Evaluation questions. It's number 5. What vision or goal did God give you? So that's a hard question for a volunteer, but you want to ask them to make them think. They're not used to thinking in these terms. Not just what job do you want to do in the church, but tell me about you in your life. So they don't know what God called me to do, so I ask more questions. What has been most fruitful in your time in ministry? How has God used you in the past? What are you excited to do in ministry? Tell me of all the things in ministry to do. Tell me the thing that would be most exciting for you to do. Well, that's easy for most Christians. You know, I would be excited to do a food pantry. I would be really excited to plan this missions trip. That's where you want to see. There's something in there that God has put there. Number 8, what ministry gives you strength rather than drains you? And often, for example, for me, when I do this, I am strengthened by this. Don't ask me to plan the food. Don't ask me to organize something. It will wear me out. But to train people for ministry, it just excites me and energizes me. So those are some questions that can help somebody sort out their God-given vision, unrelated to just signing up for a volunteer position in the church. Does that make sense? Let me move on. Number 3 is mission. It gets harder as we go on here. Mission. What ministries or actions are required to reach the vision? Now, mission is action. Your mission is the activities or ministries that reach the goal. A clear vision will help you decide the activities of the church. I would often struggle with what ministries to plan or what new ideas in ministry. And frankly, when you have a clear goal, that sorts out all the decision making for what are the necessary activities in the church. Actions need to bear fruit that is observable and measurable. This is one of the harder statements that I will make to you today. Actions need to bear fruit that is observable and measurable. And when we talk about ministry, we don't like being analytical. I just want to do what I'm doing. I don't want people to bug me. And what do you mean, is it fruitful? I enjoy doing it. We're not here just to listen to ourselves talk. Is fruit for ministry observable and measurable? Yes, it is. We like to say it is not because we want to be so spiritually minded. Well, I'm trusting the Lord for the work that He is doing. That's great. But at some point, we expect to see fruit. It might not be right away, it might not be this week, it could be months down the road. Let me give you an example. John said in 1 John, John was very practical. He says, if any of you says that you love your brother, and yet your brother is in need and you don't help him, how does the love of God abide in you? What was John doing? He was saying, you say you love your brother, but I don't see it. Where's the fruit? This would be James 2. Not James chapter 2, James as well. You say you have faith, show me your faith. There needs to be something that is visible, that is the outworking. If I say I love you and then I talk about you behind your back, that fruit is different from what I say I have. We don't need to be too judgmental and critical of everybody's ministry, but I want you to understand that your labor should produce results, and if you don't see results, you need to make changes. That basic principle I want you to understand. Are you with me? A farmer works his fields for months and months and even years, and he has no harvest. Is he going to keep doing the same thing? No, something needs to change. We're not tending the field just for the activity of tending the field. Because you see, the Lord desires your ministry to bear fruit. Didn't he say to the apostles, John 15, you didn't choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and do what? Bear fruit. He chose you, he's sending you so that your life would be fruitful. Now, you could be doing the right things in ministry for months or years, and they are fruitful. And something changes about the dynamics of your ministry, and it starts to become less fruitful, or you just need to make some changes. And so change is not an indictment against your ministry. It's really the normal course of ministry. You suddenly have more people. We suddenly have a lot of new believers here. Well, that's going to change some of the activities of the church. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just periodically you're constantly saying, are we bearing fruit? Are we bearing fruit? Do we need to make any changes? So some of the questions, and here's what I would ask, say a department leader, say a youth pastor, or a women's ministry leader. List some or all of the ministry activities you're doing. Second question is number 10. Are these activities serving the vision of the church? It's yes or no. Are each of these activities in line with the vision of the church? Third question, number 11. Are these activities fruitful? It's yes or no. Well, I think so, but we're still working on it. Let's talk again in a month. Number 4, what changes need to be made to make these activities fruitful? Now, you're all like everything I've said so far. It's when we get into these things that people start to have trouble, because no one wants to think this analytically or deeply about their ministry. As if it's an indictment against your ministry, and it's really not. It's really just how you should be thinking. And if you're not, then what happens is your fruitful methods become unfruitful, and they start to become ruts. And as the years go on, they become traditions. Let's go on to organization. So we have the right people in the right places. We have a clear vision. We have activities that are fruitful, all the right things, not too much, not too little. We're not overtaxing the church with busyness, but we're getting the job done. All those activities beget organization. Do you have a plan that people can follow? Organization is your calendar, your weekly, monthly, yearly calendar that includes all the activities needed to fulfill your God-given vision. Making a schedule protects your time and energy from being taken over by the urgent. We are called to lead, not react. What happens is, in the routine, the weekly, week in, week out of running a church, you start to respond rather than lead. And the people need leaders to lead. They need you to keep moving this thing toward the goal. And pretty soon we're just putting out fires, we're fixing problems, doing all these other things. And in organization, if something isn't working, we change it. It's not set in stone, it's not the law. Now, that's how some people we've made a plan, and it becomes the law. Nobody can touch it. Well, this is the plan. What do you mean? This is the plan. It's okay to change the plan. But primarily, having a plan protects you from wasting resources, whether it's time, volunteers, money, because we've all worked this out. We've worked it out, and this will be the last part, communication. But assuming we've all done the work of working this out, we know what the vision is. We have the activities planned. Here's the schedule. This is when this is going to happen. We're not overtaxing volunteers. We have the funds to pay for these things. So more questions under this one. Do you have a church or ministry calendar? That's a hard question. So I won't look at Greg right now. I think you generally do, but this is hard. In fact, I struggled with this because I'm not an organizer. And I would try and make a calendar, but there would often be some struggle that I would have with it, instead of just asking somebody else to do it for me. Does your calendar reflect the vision and mission of the church? Are your leaders, volunteers working together to reach a common goal? Do you resist making a plan and following a schedule? Probably half of you do. What changes need to be made to your calendar? Would you rather be left alone to do your ministry? Now, show of hands, who would say that's you? Me, my hand's up. Pastors are often isolated. The very nature of the work is an isolated ministry, which is, you have to be able to handle that. It's a pitfall as well because you get too isolated. Do you struggle to change the plan when it's unfruitful? How many of you would say that's you? I know Ollie's an organizer because I get children's ministry emails weekly or monthly from him. A creative person would not do that. These are general questions, and they're really not intended to condemn you or expose you. But I want you to help you see the bigger picture of ministry. And in the areas that you struggle, ask for help. The word for me is not knock it off. It's ask for help. Because you can't just stop doing the things that you're weak at. That's the way God made you. You can grow in things. I've grown. I mean, these are amazing notes for a disorganized person, don't you think? I have worked this out because I don't think this way. I've had to work especially hard. Other people, other pastors who are naturally leaders and organizers, they don't need this because they do it automatically. And I hate it when I'm around them and they say, oh, it'll work out. I want to say, shut up. It doesn't just work out. You are doing something to lead the church in a way that you're just not telling me the secret. You have this secret process of leadership and you don't want anyone to know. Okay, number 5, communication, and I've saved this one to offend you last. Communication is difficult in the church, okay? Do people know what you are doing and why? So I'm talking to the pastor as well as your department staff or leaders, as well as volunteers, as well as congregation. This is a word to the whole church, because there is a breakdown at all levels of communication. Sometimes willfully, sometimes we just don't understand what's happening. Communication is your ability to inform and inspire people to follow you. Inform and inspire. People want to know what God is doing and how they can be a part of the work. Isn't that a basic concept? And yet often we pastors leave them out. They don't know. We had an elders meeting and we had a time of prayer, and God really gave us something exciting to do, and that never filters out to the congregation. So the people don't know that a word was given at an elders meeting or at a retreat or something. So they can't be excited, nor know how to share in the work and say, I can help you with that. Good communication accomplishes three things. One, people are inspired by what God is doing. Number two, people will know how to participate in the work by prayer, serving, giving. And three, visitors to church can quickly see where the church is going and if they want to be a member. Habakkuk again, Habakkuk 2:2. Write the vision, make it plain upon tablets that he may run who reads it. Numbers 11:24. So Moses went out and told the people all the words of the Lord. How's that? Moses prayed, the Lord spoke something to him. Moses went out and shared all the words of the Lord. It inspires the people. I'm going to share something out of a business book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Some of you how many of you have ever heard of this book? It is a very popular book in business, and it is so plain and practical. And when I went through ministry coaching, my coach had me read this book, and it just explained the problem we were having at our church, which was I would have a staff meeting, mostly volunteers, worship leader, youth pastor, women's ministry. We would meet every 2 weeks. We would discuss vision, planning. Okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go work on this. We'd come together 2 weeks later. Everybody forgot what we talked about in the last meeting. They're busy. They have lives. And I constantly felt like, what is wrong with me? That I cannot even get this small group of leaders to follow through on anything. They'd get some things done. Oh, I didn't get to that. Oh, something came up. What I discovered is that basic breakdown is typical of all organizations. It wasn't just me. I felt so good that I was normal. This is a normal dynamic that happens in organizations. And I explained this to my leaders, and we fixed it. We were able to fix it. And you could go get this book and read it, and I would suggest it for all of you leaders to understand. Now, here are the 5 dysfunctions. Number 1 is a lack of trust among us. Now, does that make sense especially among Christians? We do trust each other, but when we're talking about hammering out ministry details, we don't trust each other. What does that look like? It means you share an idea for a new ministry idea or how to get something done, and I just say, well, that's awesome, bro. That's great. You just go do that. When really, I think that is a horrible idea. Because I don't trust you to hear me. Or maybe you just tell me what I'm doing is awesome, when really you're thinking that, Terry, needs some help. I hope his wife talks to him when he gets home. The truth is, when we're having meetings and working out the mission part of the church, the activities, we need to have, we need to trust each other. And a lack of trust produces the second dysfunction, which is a lack of debate, a lack of honest discussion. We're not being critical and slamming each other's ideas, but it's okay to say, I don't think that's a good idea. And we need to hear each other. Now, you might not be right, but we need to have the discussion. So when Pastor Greg was talking about it's okay to speak up and we need to hear what you're saying, that's where this comes from, because I've shared this with the staff. No one leader or person serving sees everything or has all the information. So we need each other to help each other clarify and to see everything that we need to see. I know you've been doing this, but it's not working. It's not working. So a lack of trust produces a lack of debate. And a lack of debate then produces a lack of commitment. Commitment to what? Commitment to a common plan. I'm not committed because we never worked it out. I encouraged you, but I never said, I'll help you out with your little thing. Are you with me so far? And there's no commitment. And because there's no commitment, fourth, there is a lack of accountability, because we never came to an agreement. It's fine if you want to do your project. And so what we have around the church are all these separate, disconnected little activities. And because there is no commitment, there is no accountability. Number 5. Or that's, let's see, trust, debate, commitment. Number 4 is accountability. Because we didn't have the hard discussion and come to an agreement of how we're going to proceed. And the lack of accountability then produces a lack of results, or doesn't produce results. Lack of trust, lack of debate, lack of commitment, lack of accountability, and a lack of results. That's not spiritual at all. It's just the nature of organizations and how people work. Does that make sense to everybody? And I explained this to my staff, and they said, that's exactly what we're doing. We're not telling each other what we really think in a helpful way. We're not really committing to a common plan. Women's ministry, we have our thing. Youth group, we have our thing. Worship team, we have our thing. We're all part of the same family, part of the same body of Christ. And in a weird way, it's helpful to know how normal this is. If you see this in your church or in your department, this is really normal. But there is a way to fix it. It has to be fixed. And if you're a leader, over people, I would even explain this. We're here to work together. We're all sharing ideas. We have to really work out the problems in our ideas and come to a commitment of a common plan. And we're all going to commit to accountability, to work this plan. And if it's not working, we can change it. Because if somebody's thinking, well, I don't know if that's a good idea, we all agree that if it's unfruitful, we can change it. We've already agreed on that. But we have to have a common plan. The basketball team doesn't go onto the court and have a game plan, but one of the players says, yeah, but I'm going to do my own. I'll get my own shot. What's going to happen to that player? He's going to be sitting on the bench. The best leader on the basketball court makes everybody else better. So these evaluation questions. Do leaders and workers know the vision, mission, and organization of the church? The next question, do you see a tendency to resist organization and planning? That's probably yes. That's always yes among certain people in the church. Next, would you rather be left alone to do your ministry? Yes. What's wrong with that? Everybody else go do your thing. Do it the right way, but leave me alone. Do you struggle to stay focused on the common vision of the church? Last question. What is God speaking to you during this training? We'll share that in our wrap-up session. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and have discussion. And so you can honestly share your ideas about maybe a question or a comment or something to clarify anything we've been over. And so, yes, what?
5 minutes.
Take 5 minutes. Let's not take too long. The donuts are gone anyway. There's no reason to linger. There's no donuts. All right, 5 minutes, and we'll come back.